So I think we can start. No? So welcome everyone again to this to the end of this first day of our conference, and we're going to finish with one of the keynote talks, and the keynote talk by Professor Paula Cristina Pereira, who is associate professor at the University of Porto, Universidade do Porto. And she teaches philosophical anthropology, public space themes and problems, ethics and politics. And she's the director of the doctoral program in philosophy and principal researcher of the philosophy and public space research group of the Institute of Philosophy. She has been publishing and working a lot on these issues of the philosophy of the city, and they've been publishing for several years already in these intersections between philosophy and the city and topics related to the public space. She has organized a big international conference on the philosophy of the city in 2017 in Porto.
With the American Research Group of Philosophy of City.
Yes, with the international research group. And well, it's a pleasure to have her here, and the talk is entitled Philosophy of the City, Rethinking the Political. I'll give you the word.
Obrigada. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, boa tarde a todos. Eu vou falar em inglês, portanto vou ler. Perde sempre parte da nossa expressividade de nós mesmos quando não falamos na nossa língua, e eu peço desculpa por isso, mas é um encontro internacional e, portanto, cumpro os requisitos. Mais uma vez, good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been a very full day, and you may be a little tired, more than me, of course. So thank you all in advance being here. Thank you. I will try always to be brief and keep to allotted time. As such, I would rather read, because it's in English, and so as not to lose track of my train of thought. First, I want to thank Maria Filomena and, of course, Nélio, Conceição, for their invitation to this conference. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. And I want to congratulate you for organizing this conference and say how much I appreciate your project. Well, I'm always delighted when another project about city comes up. For someone like me, as Nélio said, who work and try to reflect on contemporary city and public space since 2008, it is indeed a satisfaction. To start, one of my primary concerns today is about the public space, privatization of public space. And this is typical of a global neoliberal process that seems to stifle the dynamics operating between fragmentation and reconfiguration, and between discourses and practice essential to the diversity of ways of dwelling, and therefore of thinking, feeling, and being. Here, today, now, I intend to highlight the feature of philosophy of city that are indispensable to rethink, I think, to rethink and reshape political philosophy, in drawing an analogy between philosophy of city and political philosophy. I should explain beforehand what I understand by philosophy of city and my conception, I will try, only that, of political philosophy. Three possible approaches are: first, to explain how philosophy of city has been constituted as sub-area of philosophy called precisely philosophy of city. Well, about this, we we will offer, perhaps in September, October, Irandina? September? Okay. An optional or transversal subject at the University of Porto in October. is a transversal. It has other names I don't remember now. It's a transversal. The second approach, historical approach, because philosophy and city tell a parallel story. The third approach, a multidisciplinary, which seeks to understand and contextualize the city as a tangible, multidisciplinary object of study and analyze some themes and challenges of contemporary urbanity. Its focus encompasses contemporary cities and the multidimensional impact of increasing human mobility on ways of life and relationship between space, power, citizen, and politics. There is a fourth approach to which I have dedicated more time and which is rooted in the three previous approaches, is the link between philosophy of city and political philosophy. This approach examines the challenge of contemporary post-industrial, not industrial, but post-industrial city, so as to better understand or answer to this question. Why is philosophy interested in the city once again? I will focus on the post-industrial city, a clearly marked city in its most diverse material and immaterial dimensions. Thus, much of crisis cities are facing coincides with uncontrolled urbanization, typical of the expansionist drive of the capitalist economic model. In my research in recent years, I have talked and written about philosophy of city and public space and specific issues like public space, speciality as an anthropological dimension, common good, common space, the sense of the common, human condition and urban condition, and of course the right to the city. As I note, and Harvey too, or as Harvey note, and I'm too, many of transformation in contemporary world are associated to special phenomena of space. Spatial configuration, for example, spatial configuration and concentration of production and wealth, mobility, networks of goods, information and technology, relocation, migration flows, complexity between proximity and distance, widespread urbanization, commercialization of urban space, urban and exclusion, social movements, etc., 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 etc. And these special phenomena appear to be articulated with global economic playing fields and with new geographies of power. Manifest often in the lack of criticism, in the standardization of culture, or in the reduction of citizenship to consumer relation. The globalization of markets not only has an impact on the economic space, but also on cultural, social, and political space. Economic imperatives cross all dimensions of human life, and it is difficult to articulate private interests and public interests, forgetting the common good as superior to the good of associated to special phenomena, individuals, and as a fundamental element of community cohesion. The city as urban space, the space most marked by the process of industrialization and post-industrialization, becomes itself the agent and place of markets. The space of city are appropriate as a commodity in a process intensified by real estate speculation, tourism, gentrification, etc. Well, for me, to ignore these phenomena, among others, of course, as object more or less worthy of philosophical thought, would to be ignore essential issues of our time. To ignore the spatial dimension of the phenomena would be to ignore the space of the city, public squares as a political entity, as the supreme political space. The space of the city, namely public space, are not only institutional space, but space of political practice. It has always been, as Francisco Colanc, is academic who work in Madrid about city too. It always been in the public squares of the big cities that protests have taken place against repression and against the results of capitalist economic policies. It has always been in squares of our cities that democracy seeks to materialize, such as, for example, as everybody knows, Tiananmen Square in Beijing, Tahrir Square in Cairo, Puerta del Sol in Madrid, Zuccotti Park in New York, and movements such 15M in Spain, Occupy in the United States, or Fora Temer in Brazil. Although they are very different movements, these movements are very different movements. But they have something in common. They can be analyzed as a particular form of action and production of public and political space. To understand these movements as a political criticism, we can understand this movement as a political criticism through the appropriation of urban space with public debates, artistic activities, and the expression of dissidence with a clear symbolic content. In this perspective, we can speak, or not, of an exercise of public philosophy. Well, I would like to speak a little more about the link between philosophy of city and the exercise of philosophy as a public philosophy, but it's not time today, perhaps another opportunity, because it's the team who I'm working now. Those manifestations in urban space demand improved democracy, seeking more participatory means of expression and discussion that could create a new opportunity, among many others, to redefine the political and social space, thereby redefining the city. Since 2001, and for the first time in history, more than half of the world's population lives in cities. Forecasts predict that the number could reach 80% by 2050. 80% in 2050. There is no comparison with other periods of history. Is the reason I reflect about the post-industrial city, and not only on industrial city. One reason. There is no comparison with other periods of history, nor with the current political and social role of cities. However, Western thinking about cities has always been based on the link between politics and urban reality. Labeled by Eduardo Soja, as the post-metropolis, urban space are marked by an unprecedented degree of heterogeneity, discontinuity that defines social and political life. Therefore, to properly understand the current political reality implies reflecting on cities, which, in turn, means understand the urban condition and citizen as a specific category of human existence. Philosophy of city is thus concerned with the relationship between the citizen, politics, the city, and space. But the truth is that the spatial dimension of the city, essential to political action, is often banished from our cities. This is necessary articulate with a spatiality of value priorities. For example, property speculation and gentrification, migration process, and the climatic crisis all imply new forms of mobility that call for a new equation of justice and mainly of spatial justice. The project I have some research of the research group Philosophy and Public Space have with Madrid, with Francis Colon, is precisely about just city in this moment. As Harvey noted in the text, Rebel Cities from the Right to the City to the Urban Revolution is a known text of David Harvey. As Harvey noted in this text, there is intimate relationship between capitalist development and urbanization. Capitalism needs urbanization to absorb the surplus production that it never stops producing. The quality of urban life has become a commodity for those with money, as has the city itself in a world in which consumerism, tourism, cultural and knowledge-based activities become key aspects of the urban political economy. For Foucault, the present, as everybody knows, I think, the present age is the age of space. Is the age of simultaneity, the age of near and far, of side by side, of disperse. As Foucault so rightly noted, space is not dead or fixed, as opposed to time, understood the time as wealth, life. To think about space in city today implies the deconstruction of thought. In my words, the spatialization of philosophy and the territorialization of thought, namely of political philosophy. This means bringing political space back to the space of equals and diversity, beyond the normative or legal determination of governments and state. Likewise, we must resist the temptation to design the ideal, the utopian city, which, when materialized, always ends up rejecting the critical mobilization of the utopian function itself. For example, Deco City, Slow City, Civitate Dei, Città del Sol, or La Ville Radieuse, there is a normativity the modern political theory present there, for example, which is rooted in the juridical political model. City of God, city-state, the garden city, the functional city, the industrial city, the global city, sanctuary city, the virtual city, the smart city, among others. They all have physical, symbolic, or virtual spatialities, designed and redesigned between geometries of power and resistance to itself. It is when we put geography, urbanity, and politics together that space is revealed. And it is the spatiality that matters to philosophy. And this is linked to another question, is not my question, is a question of David Harvey, but I think it's very important. Harvey asked, who does the city belong to? Or to whom does the city space belong? Foucault's work on the device of power, of sovereignty, and biopolitics are useful when analyzing the exercise of power over a territory or space of bodies and the distribution thereof in space and on the biological control of the population. For Foucault, when moving from legal societies in which sovereign power is central to new mechanism of power, molded into the surveillance of different institutions, everybody knows, family, school, hospitals, place of work, prison, etc. Power becomes more complex in as much as it is widespread and entails special organization. This allows us to speak of the special dimension of power with geographers. David Harvard, as everybody knows, is a geographer. Shifting political philosophy to the city, to the analysis of the phenomena where they occur in the urban space, implies that reflection on democracy or justice should be not limited to a legal and normative dimension, but should also consider the phenomena as they are present, so that we can thus more precisely question the nature and order of domination and or of normalization, because the city is a world of fragmented rationality, a set of interrelationship and interpolations of sphere of culture, social subsystem, and everyday life. As according as Josep Ramoneda, is a Spanish from Barcelona journalist and philosopher, say, philosophy is an urban phenomenon, and city is a phenomenon of philosophical relevance. There is no philosophy outside city, and there is no city where the dissociative laws of logos do not exist, where the effective truth of things is not recognized. Unity, about this conference, the fragmentation, unity is not the object of the city, because the city is pluralism, as Aristotle said. And it is precisely this recognition that constitutes the crack through which the capacity for dissociation is articulated, or, in other words, where rational thought is introduced into the organic homogeneity, and with this, the possibility of philosophical thought. Once again, according to Foucault, philosophy plays a critical role in the practice of power that spans social and governmental institutions. In this critique of power, Foucault takes a stand away from political philosophy as a discourse of truth from a modern political theory, which is rooted in the legal political model. An ontology of present or of actuality can help us understand how philosophy of city can renew political philosophy also as social and political philosophy, because I prefer speak about not only about political philosophy, but about social and political philosophy. In this, about when I talk about the philosophy of city, of course. For Foucault, the ontology of the present is constituted by a critique of the mechanism of subjection and domination generated by disciplinary and control societies, which implies a questioning about actuality. And Foucault asks, what is the actuality of which we are part? What experience do we have of ourselves? What are the forms of contemporary struggle and resistance? It is important to identify the mode of production of discourse and knowledge that engender the practice of man. In the words of Katia Mursi, I discovered recently in the text called, I like very much the title, the text called by The Heroism of the Present, we can read, Kant characterized Aufklärung, I don't know German, Aufklärung, as an exit from minority. It is by a disposition of the will that this exit can occur. It is a task, an obligation, a developing process. For Kant, man is responsible for his state of minority, and to get out of this state, he needs to make a personal change, a work on himself. This is for Foucault the attitude of modernity that Foucault finds in Kant corresponds that this period is a historical actuality of which men are part, but which is only produced by their decision. It is therefore necessary to consider this period as a process of which men are part, collectively, and act of courage to be performed personally. They are simultaneously elements and agents of the same process. In summary, through Kant's text, Foucault presents this conception of modernity not as a historical period, but as an attitude. By attitude, he means a mode of relation with respect to actuality. I prefer talk about contemporaneity, but it is another question. A certain voluntary choice made by individuals, a way of thinking, feeling, acting, and conducting oneself because we belong to an era and is proposed as a task. The continuity of this task, the continuity of this attitude, the continuity of this heroism takes on new configuration in the face of a singular vulnerability of social, economic, political, and geopolitical domination, from deforestation to pandemics and food crises, which for Edouard Delruel and for me raise the question, as in the lesson of Philosophy at City, of the impossibility of dissociating the task of political philosophy from the present. That's mean, I cannot, therefore, dissociate my practice of political philosophy from the history of which I am witness and which I find myself implicated as a social actor. The underlying question of political philosophy that one wants to critique and how to articulate the comprehensive function of the past and the present and the normative function of the present regarding what should be just or unjust. Because it is not the question is not is one and another. Understanding of what is or denunciation what should be. It's the two, it's one and the other. The role of political philosophy is thus to build a critical position on the world around us, or to reflect, in Foucault's words, on political, not in terms of an analytics of truth or of the moral telos, but within the framework of an ontology of ourselves, of an ontology of actuality based on historical, critical reflection of philosophy as a political ethos in relation to reality. The city offers the best opportunity today, I think, for political innovation because of the complexity of the public policies that can come under the city's auspices and the dimension that permit more direct relation with population. These unprecedented opportunities are articulated with the empowerment of civil society. Civil society cannot be a passive object, but an active subject that has the duty and right to participate in the life of the city. Philosophy of city meets political philosophy to produce citizens capable to interpreting towns and cities. Urban communities can become communities of knowledge. Those who know their problems best and can best take the floor and make decisions about them. Politics is no longer only a struggle of powers, but a struggle of roles. Roles separate between those who know and understand and those who do not know and do not understand. A separation between experts and ordinary citizens. Well, another dimension, of course, of struggle of powers. But the citizen, as affect, can and must take the floor within the framework of the right to the city. The future is unpredictable because we live in complex times, but also because the most important decision about our lives and life on city are not within our reach. Philosophy of city has proven to be a precious instrument for the actualization of democracy by relaunching fundamental connections between knowledge, space, citizen, and decision, making problems and perspectives on them visible. In times of complex challenge, and urban community can also be a community of knowledge, or must be a community of knowledge. Philosophy of city can renew political philosophy by empowering communities as community of knowledge, able to respond to the challenge of the quality of life of the city. For example, quality of public service as health, education, transportation, gentrification, etc., etc. A community of knowledge implies, therefore, combining the experience of space with the understanding, problematization, and conception of the space of the cities. That is, philosophy can and should give us instruments to decide how we want to live and how we want to build our cities. Philosophy can and must have a part in public policies. Our new times, show us that science is not just a subject that remains in the restricted field of scientists, nor public and social policies in the hands of a few experts, nor philosophy at the gates of the city. Philosophy has also a social responsibility. The fundamental decision about a dignified life and even the reconfiguration of the good life require the clear articulation between state, city, urban communities, and civil society. It is, of course, an immense challenge. But living in our world with so diverse crises is also an immense challenge, especially when the possibility of a dignified life seems more and more reduced to a privileged few. The require of social responsibility by which we can measure, for me, our degree of civility against the political, economic, and scientific complexity of our age, which require our attention, care, and reflection. That is to say, it requires reflection to be a special link to exercising citizenship by identifying and analyzing some of the problems and behaviors of society and contemporary culture caused by process, particularly economic and political process, which have led to the gradual privatization of space, research, and common goods, shifting philosophy to the city in our widespread urban age is, in a way, we remember the Aristotle, it's a way of social life as a universality of participation and not as a universality of contemplation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Sit here. I can sit. Just.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Paula, for your wide-ranging presentation and for opening so many paths for discussion. And now we have time for several questions.
Okay. Thiago.
Thank you, Professor Paula, for your presentation. I will finish with one point in the beginning when you referred about the importance of public squares on public life, and even for the subject of philosophy of the city, and you referred several historical examples. So my question would be, what do you think is the role of virtual public squares for the public life of the city? Because I found this. You spoke about how empirical phenomena are much more important to the city. So I cannot figure out how to think today of public and political life without referring to the way that social networks and virtual squares, advantages or disadvantages, it's up to you for assessing. But I find it very important to think the articulation between public life and this virtual square, or if it's even possible to consider that the political community can exist only in virtual space.
Yes. Can I ask, or if you want to question?
No.
Yes.
No, I think you can answer.
Thank you for your question. I can answer in English or in Portuguese if you want. Portuguese or English?
As you prefer. In English,
I don't know the other people. There are many people that are now Portuguese here. Yes,
there
okay.
are many. Maybe in English it's
okay.
better. Yes.
Well, if I remember, in 2010, yes, I have participated in project with Spanish colleagues, and the title of project was Community of Action and Knowledge. I worked in this project during 5 years. And these communities was essential virtuals. When I talk or I reflect on philosophy of city or on city as an object, I don't see the city only as a physical object. The city today, the more important for me in city is the way of life. I'm an urban person, but the urban mode, the urban condition, because the urban condition, it's not a dimension that exists only in the physical city. Is in the world with most of people living in city or in urban space, the urban condition is the majority of people, mainly in Europe or in other country, not in other country, Africa or Asia, as we know. Well, in this sense, I think the urban condition is present too in the virtual community, of course. And the question for me, I have written about this. The question for me is our relation with the virtual communities or the net or the networks, because this is an instrument, this is an object, but the important is if this instrument or this technology is appropriate, or that means I have the duty in this the framework of philosophy of city, if you want, to appropriate of this technology to do another work, because it's not different. So I know in this paper, on this presentation, I have talked only about the movements in place, in physical place, but the importance in network or in virtual communities and physical space are the same for me in this discourse, on this reflection. I don't know if I answer you, but yes, okay, thank you.
I was thinking about Thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you.
On this title, I did not hear the. I have heard, but I don't know the name, and then I could not take note. The heroic presence. This idea of heroism, which begins very early with Baudelaire, much earlier than Foucault, and in this experience of being an hero, there is an element of failure and of warning, and these elements do not fit entirely with a project who is based. I think your idea is very, very interesting. Philosophy of the city as a rethinking of the political. I think is a very, very good, very stimulant challenge. But I think that we are not able to have a landscape of our life in our cities, post-industrial cities. And you have mentioned, I did not know these numbers. In 2050, there will be 80% of people living in cities. In the cities. Then the opposition between me and the other, or we and them, is really suffering a dislocation, or even a disappearance. These are not. It is not really a question, but I see the heroic of a present as a description of a mal de vivre, and at the same time a struggle to go beyond the necessity, the controlling. Every jet nowadays, no family can raise a child at home. We know lots of people we love very much that have studied with their parents or some teachers where this is not allowed to have an idea, have an idea about these small details. At the same time, we feel more secure. It's true. But then these enlargements, huge enlargement of the city, is asking us for something I'm not sure we are able to handle with.
Understand your preoccupation is a problem, of course, but perhaps is the reason I talk about the present, the contemporary present. I have a text I prefer the contemporary, a way of being contemporary. For me, there are more sense in that. But yes, the time is unpredictable, as I said. We don't know if we can thought about everything that occurs or that happens in these terms. But I think, I try one thing. It's trying. Yes, trying, and stop to read, and stop to hear, and stop to see, for thinking about what happens now. And my question is, what's happening in my world? Because it's my time. It is my time. The time is only, yes, it's my time too, but it's my time. I choose work in philosophy. In this difficult time, I choose to think that philosophy have the duty of this social responsibility, because everybody, we hear every day, the science have some social responsibility, the social science, this, that, and philosophy too. What is this social responsibility? For me, the possibility is only a possibility of understand and reflect about the social responsibility of philosophy is to attend this time and try to reflect more slowly. It's a process different, not more slowly, more without other information. I think it's more something like that. I don't know, because it's not properly a question, it's observation and
reflections upon your talk.
Yes, thank you very much.
I don't know if I can. Please.
Just following on what you were saying about the social responsibility of philosophy, I was trying just to understand better how, in practice, do you think philosophy can be, I think you said, an instrument to support democracy, to ensure democracy, because that's very necessary, that's a very contemporary need, very important.
Thank you. I discovered that in framework of philosophy of city and work with philosophers of city. In framework of philosophy of city, mainly the philosophers of city I know are from United States, in this moment in Europe, from Spain, France, and only that, and the Netherlands too. Michael Negenborg, yes. There are different ways of working philosophy of city. This, what I talking today, is only a small possibility. There are people working, for example, in public policies, with women, with education, in other fields, different. But there are some in common. I think that is this common that is important for your question. That that are in common is it's the challenge of trying to dislocate philosophy, the discourse, the traditional discourse of philosophy, from the transcendence to immanence. That means it's, for example, today, in our time, is very acceptable. Everybody knows what is applied practical, ethical, etc., in other fields. In philosophy, political philosophy, it's not so. That possibility is not so used. So I think we can do a different work here in political philosophy. When I established the link between philosophy of city and political philosophy, I do not want to do a substitution. It's not that. It's rethink the possibility of political philosophy work like practical ethical or applied ethical that is used among us today in different fields, like Foucault said, for example, in prison, in schools, in families, in prison, etc., etc., etc. Locally. It's a locally work. Is another conference, this team. Yes.
My question goes in line with the previous two, because it somehow looks like what you are proposing is also a disciplinary issue also in Foucault's term, because it's also in the sense of the subdivisions of philosophy, even institutionally. It looks like if philosophy still needs to justify itself in order to have the city as an object. But when we can retrospectively quite easily understand how this philosophy was born in the city.
For the city,
but
with
for,
the city.
For several reasons
yes,
throughout the
yes,
historical
yes.
and philosophical process, this immediate contact was somehow lost. And it seems that we are still trying to understand what is nowadays the role of philosophy. Well, this is a commentary, but also some of the things that you are proposing are also proposals that could come from other disciplines that are not strictly philosophical. So at the same time, it's also multidisciplinary approach yes. And the slowness that you are talking about, and the way of dealing with the concepts. But I don't know if it looks like you are proposing also a way of rethinking also these disciplinary boundaries that somehow tend to be strict, also in universities, in the curricula. I don't know.
Yes, I want that.
Okay.
I want that beginning in September, October, a new discipline. But it's not more important.
That's not more important, of course.
Not more important. But this history of philosophy, the question, as you describe, is an important question in framework of philosophy for the philosophers of city. Mm-hmm. Is too important. But the story of philosophy is the emergence of different disciplines. As anthropological philosophy, as aesthetics, as nowadays philosophy of technology. It's the history of philosophy. And what this reflects is most important. What the emergence of new sub-areas, it's same, reflects that philosophy attend to happen to our world. Mm-hmm. And reflect in another way the social responsibility and the philosophical responsibility and political responsibility of philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. That's the most important thing.
The most important thing.
But it has to have consequences.
It's not different of other
levels.
moments of history.
Yeah.
Yes, I hope so. Thank you. Very important. Thank you.
More questions?
Just thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Very interesting. If I understood properly, at some point you put an emphasis on space and spatiality to understand the city in a philosophical way. And I was wondering if this is really a necessity, or if it is contingent with some aspects that you were emphasizing, like the geometries of power and because the other part of the question is where is the temporality? How important is the temporality in the city? Of course, of course it is.
Thank you. Philosophy always talk about reflect about temporality, and somewhere in history, I forgot to talk about speciality. And who talk about speciality? I began one of a book of mine with this. Who talk about speciality? Geographers, urbanists, architects, and others. And philosophers, no, there are some who talk, like Heidegger in another sense, and others, of course. But it is a necessity because of this. When the political philosophy, our political philosophy, even in this moment, have some dimensions or old dimension as like the political philosophy from modernity. Is the political philosophy of the king or the sovereign and for the government, and not the political of the citizen. And when I talk about the necessity of dislocation, the transcendence to immanence, I think the spatiality means that territorialize the thought is more strong. The expression, I think the people can understand more this movement, the transcend to immanence, and the difference of my conception, the traditional conception of political philosophy, and my conception in framework of philosophy of city or political philosophy. I don't like very much talk about political philosophy. I prefer social and political philosophy in these terms. I don't know if I answer, I try. But spatiality is only one aspect, among others, in this framework, because I talk about only one. Okay? Another opportunity. I cannot talk about other things. Thank you.
Well, if we don't have further questions, João.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Of
For
course.
me? Yes, of course.
Yeah, I know.
It's not going to be a smart question. So you talk about political spaces and the appropriation of space as to type the politicization of the proper space. Therefore, all those examples, Occupy Wall Street, etc., etc., etc. So that type of political actions is as kind of two main characteristics. One is a sort of interruption it does on the functionality of space. The other one is, I think, it's kind of reconstitution of a classical, let's say, a classical political space. And I was wondering how can, and I was wondering on another type of political action concerning space. And when you were talking, I was remembering the fuel drivers strike in Portugal. That's another type of political action in space, because it interrupts the lines of supply. And well, my question is, how can you articulate that type of actions with the other, if there's any type of articulation? Because it seems to me that it's two types of interruption. One that reconstitutes the kind of classical political states, and the other one that does another thing altogether different. I don't even know if that other action is properly political on the classical meaning of the term.
Thank you. On the classical meaning of term, of course.
Okay.
No, but I said, but perhaps not very well, that there are all different. The importance is not the movement itself. The important is what the different movements can produce. They produce an interruption, or they produce with their practice other form of discourse. What are the question for me is, it's not the difference between them, but the common you understand, challenge for me in this moment is think or reflect what they are in common. What they are so in common that can be important or no, or not important for the political thought. And more than that, for me, more important than that, it's these movements are temporary. And for me, it's a problem in terms of construction of political thought. Are temporary. Because they are temporary, I can ask only a problem for me in this moment. I can ask the question: how transform this temporary movement or this community of action in community of knowledge? Because I think for philosophy it's more important. Okay? Or in other way, or in other terms, what that movements have, who can transform, who provide the transformation in community of knowledge. And this, I think, is the function of one important function in this moment of philosophy, the political philosophy, is the reflection about this, how to transform, how to empower this movement. Because if they stop or die as temporary movements, you never see these movements as community of knowledge, because it's very important to transform and discover new discourse to reflect about the political, not traditional political philosophy, but actually. Okay, thank you. It's a challenge to think in this. I don't thought very well in this moment about that.
Okay, so now we thank you very much, Paula. Thank you all, and we should finish now. And an applause.
Thank you all. Obrigado.
And see you tomorrow in the morning at 9:30, I think. Yeah, 9:30. Yeah.
Thank you.